Right now on the new normal, we are just getting new information on the number of vaccines administered across the country. The CDC now says just over 26% of the U.S. population has received at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. 14% of the population has now been fully vaccinated, and these are the numbers that come as President Biden sets a new vaccine goal.
We will, by my 100th day in office, have administered 200 million shots in people's arms.
That's double the president's initial goal, a milestone the U.S. met in just under 60 days. Hey, bringing back Broadway. Yeah, the first step, they say, in this is vaccinations. Dedicated vaccination sites, pop-up testing sites, plans to manage the crowds. But listen, this generates $15 billion typically in a year. And this not only impacts the actual theaters, but the restaurants, the shops, and the tourisms that fuel these shows. And we have just learned that Rutgers University will require students returning to campus this fall to prove they have been vaccinated against COVID-19. It's one of the largest universities in the country to make that decision. News 12's New Jersey's Tony Caputo is on campus right now with reaction from the university and students.
Elizabeth, it's a straightforward message from Rutgers University to its students and faculty. If you're returning to campus this fall, if you plan to, you have to get the coronavirus vaccination. Now, Rutgers is home to about 70,000 or so students. It's among the first U.S. universities to put a vaccine mandate in place. University President John Holloway says this will help provide for a safer and more robust college experience for our students. And students we spoke with agreed.
Really difficult being remote the whole time. Like, I feel like my classes could have been easier. I could have been learning more.
I definitely miss being in a classroom. Like, I don't feel like I learn as much when I'm remote.
The majority of the students with whom we spoke with say they are more than willing to get vaccinated. Now, Rutgers is also urging all faculty members, staff to get the vaccination as well. Reporting from New Brunswick, New Jersey, I'm Tony Caputo for News 12.
Now, a lot of employees are wondering, will their employers require that very same thing? So this morning we're talking about the future of work. You know, a year ago, COVID-19 forced many companies to send employees home. They had a laptop and a prayer relay. Well, now, as the number of vaccinated people grows, the prospect of returning to your old office routine appears more possible. But will employees want to return to those buildings when it is safe again? And should companies do away with Zoom and return to pre-COVID ways? I'm really excited about this conversation. Rachel Casanova, Senior Managing Director of Workplace Innovation at Cushman & Wakefield, is joining us, and so too is Bhushan Sethi, the Joint Global Leader of PwC's People and Organization Practice. So thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Delighted to be here.
Do remember, we want you to be part of this conversation for the next half hour. We answer your questions, and you can submit your comments as well. And you can do that right now on our social media pages. Now, companies needed to shift. I mean, this was unexpected, right? Remote work in early 2020. But right now, right, a year later, the leaders, they have this chance to really plan for a post-pandemic future. They have an opportunity to take an intentional, strategic approach to decide remote, hybrid, or for people to return. So, Bhushan, I guess first, you know, you've been looking at this as a numbers game, really, for CEOs and companies to decide.
Yeah, absolutely. And delighted to be here. And first of all, it's great news around Broadway and vaccines and the reopening. When we talk to CEOs around the world, there is a lot of confidence from CEOs in terms of growth prospects for 2021 and beyond. When we talk to employees, there's similar confidence, but what employees want is they want to understand their safety. They want to understand for those essential workers that there's physical safety. They want to understand if their companies are really going to invest in their flexibility, in their mental health, in their tools. So there's a good positive sign. We saw the jobs figures yesterday that were lower in terms of first-time unemployment claims. So there is some good news. Employees are willing. They want to learn new skills. We've seen a lot of creativity during the pandemic. So there's a glass half full. It's up to us as business leaders, as workers, as community members to say, How do we drive vaccinations? How do we drive safe reopening? How do we drive consumer demand? And the return to work for those people that are working from home will be slow and steady and will depend on leadership and culture. And I'm sure Rachel and Elizabeth will talk a lot more about that over the course of the next half an hour.
And, you know, we asked people on Twitter because we wanted to gauge how were they feeling as we, you know, dive into this topic. And, you know, people responded right away. I mean, we had hundreds of votes within minutes. So the question was, are you ready to return to the office? And yes, I can't wait is only at 38%, but no, I like working remote comes in at over 50% of people saying that, and 11% really still aren't sure. And Rachel, I know for, you know, people who are wondering whether or not they're going to come back, what the physical space is going to look like is this great unknown.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And in many ways, we say it's going to look like everything, all of the above. The real estate cycle means that many spaces are built, and we're going to come back to those spaces. And there's something to that, to say, let there not be one more level of change. This is like onboarding corporate America all at once. You haven't been there for a year. So to some extent, it's coming back to things that you know. Now, we do believe that what people are missing is that connection, that human connection of being in the same room with people. So one hypothesis is we need more spaces for people to come together. That's also contingent upon the health and safety, right? So right now, offices that are open, they're saying, please don't use the conference rooms, or we're only going to be a third full. So there is a sense that we will want more spaces for people to come together. And then, although people say they're great working at home and they're able to focus, there are others who want to come to the office to focus. So it's this duality of, I want to come to be with people, but I want to come because I want to be in work mode. I want to get into that deeper thought that maybe I can't do while I'm at home.
You know, and it's interesting you say that, because I asked this morning on Facebook, just to kind of put it out there, if you're a remote worker, give me 3 words to describe your experience. And they were kind of all over the map. Some people were like, you know, never wearing pants again, and, you know, being funny about it. But overwhelmingly, when you take a look at it, you know, people were talking about their commute, not paying for the LIRR, need more wine. I love it, but it's very lonely, came up a lot of times. You know, the commute was in there, but this loneliness, this isolation being a factor really played into what people had to say.
Yeah, and our studies show that our youngest generations, they thrive on being with people. They learn the periphery, the how to behave, overhearing things, what to wear. We learn those things when we go to these places. We've also done a really good job of asking individuals what they want. But for the last 2 decades, all we've talked about is how people need to work together, and sharing and knowledge sharing, and we create and we iterate with other people. So we really are short on the data as to what's working well for teams, and how do we make that great? And then how do we think about the business? So there really are 3 layers, and we can't get to layer 2 and 3 until we can know that people are safe. That's going to be the most important. That's what you hear more CEOs leaning into than we've heard. You know, mental health, physical health, do what you need to. The other reason people may not be ready to go back is schools aren't really a steady piece. Commutation is something people are worried about. So it's really such a broad spectrum. And back to what you said earlier about Broadway opening, this is a great sign. When we see consumer behavior wanting to go to events, wanting to be on Broadway, we think that opening up will start to make people feel more comfortable in all facets of their life.